Across much of Africa, we still talk about digital colonization as though it were a future we might yet avoid. The more uncomfortable truth is that the physical backbone of our digital life has already been built, financed, and largely maintained by Chinese firms. And South Africa, the continent's most industrialized economy, is no exception to a pattern its leaders tend to locate somewhere else. This is not a warning about what might happen. It is a description of what already has. Consider the scale. Huawei has built roughly 70% of Africa's 4G networks and about half of its 3G, displacing European rivals over 2 decades. This is not a distant concern for us. South Africa now sources the majority of its telecommunications infrastructure from Chinese suppliers, and the dependence is deepening rather than easing. Late in 2025, MTN and ZTE switched on what they described as the world's first commercial 5-band radio unit here in the Western Cape, on a network that already reaches about 97% of South Africans. When a technology sits that close to universal, the choice of who supplies it stops being a procurement detail. It becomes a question of national exposure. Backbone is a surveillance market that has grown quickly. 11 African countries have together spent around $2 billion on Chinese smart city surveillance. Nigeria is the largest single buyer at more than $470 million, with Ghana, Morocco, and Zambia each spending over $250 million. These systems are sold as crime reduction, yet researchers who mapped how they are actually used found them repurposed to watch opposition figures, journalists, and activists. In Uganda, a Huawei network was turned on the opposition leader Bobi Wine. In Zimbabwe, a facial recognition deal handed a Chinese firm millions of African faces to train its algorithms. The stated purpose and the real one are not always the same. Now, the tools travel easily, but the full apparatus does not, because it depends on data integration and state reach that most governments simply lack. Even so, two facts should give any board pause. First, China's national intelligence law obliges its firms to support the work of the state. Second, the African Union discovered that its Huawei-built headquarters had been quietly routing internal data to Shanghai for years. Here lies the paradox. Governments adopt these networks, cameras, and identity systems to strengthen the state, yet outsourcing all three to a handful of foreign vendors quietly hollows out the very sovereignty they believe they are reinforcing. It feels like control. In governance terms, it is concentration risk. And South Africa is now assembling the domestic half of that architecture. Our national digital identity system, with facial recognition as its primary biometric, is being built inside the Revenue Services hosting environment, even as the responsible department concedes its own cybersecurity maturity remains low. Draft regulations enabling remote biometric verification were opened for public comment through the middle of 2026. Much of this is welcome, designed to curb fraud and improve service. It also builds precisely the centralized registry a surveillance state would require. We are not without law. Our Protection of Personal Information Act is capable legislation, but its enforcement record is thin, and our courts have only begun to test surveillance questions, and a statute that is not enforced offers very little resistance to a surveillance stack that is already embedded. So for those of us who sit on boards, the lesson is uncomfortable but simple. Reliance on a single foreign vendor for critical national infrastructure paired with a domestic identity system of admittedly weak security is a governance exposure, whether or not it is ever exploited. This is concentration risk in plain sight. The governing question, then, is not how to keep Chinese technology out. That is no longer possible. It is whether we can govern a dependency we did not design. The responsible response is not alarm. It is diversification, enforceable oversight, and the confidence to insist that not every available capability deserves to be deployed. If you would like, I will come and run this with your leadership team and help you turn a dependency we did not choose into a short list of decisions we can,